Welcome. It has just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, the 23rd of April, and you are watching episode 168 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap providing an insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, another election, another name, is my guest Steve Andrew, Trumpet of Patriots candidate for Capricornia.
How's things, Bill? It's been great.
Good, thanks. I'll just finish my
The
joke.
regional wrap's been a
Steve is the former state member for Mirani and will contest the seat of Capricornia as the Trumpet of Patriots candidate at the 3rd of May election. Steve has several years' experience in the Queensland parliamentary system as a member for the state electorate of Mirani, which transects the federal electorate of Capricornia, and he knows well the people of central Queensland. Steve is a fourth-generation local South Pacific Island heritage. Prior to entering Queensland Parliament in 2017, he worked as a firearms dealer and pest controller. As of April 2019, Steve was the only One Nation MP in the Queensland Parliament and was disendorsed just months prior to the October 24 Queensland state election. He contested the electorate of Mirani as a KAP candidate, but lost his seat by 620 votes after the One Nation ran a candidate and preferenced the winning Liberal candidate. Now, as a proud representative of the Patriots, he will campaign on a platform of limiting government spending, tackling government debt, supporting small and family businesses, and bringing back affordable housing. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, thanks, Bill. And I was going to say earlier, I appreciate what you do as far as a conduit to do with honesty and to be able to understand what actually happens within Queensland Parliament, people like myself who are representatives, and understanding just the whole play and lay of the land of what politics really means to us and the direction we're going. So thanks for that.
I think one of the biggest problems with politics in Australia is the general public is A, apathetic, and B, is very unlearned in regards to how the system works and what it's all based on, and even has any familiarity with our constitution, as do obviously some of our politicians and a lot of our current candidates, because they certainly don't know the difference between the responsibilities of the federal government and the state government.
The rights and responsibilities of government and how it interacts with the constituents, the way that they actually spend taxpayers' money, it's in paramount importance that people understand what government is and that the government actually serves the people and not the other way around. I think governments have grown right out of size, the way that they deal with people. Like Queensland, for instance, last 2024 estimates program, I asked in that parliament, has there ever been an audit done on a Queensland budget? There's never been an audit done on a Queensland budget in all of Queensland's history. And I also asked if there's ever been an audit done on a Queensland Tier 1 provider, which is a major multi-million-dollar contractor that provides services to the government. We've never done one of those either. So what does that mean for Queensland? What does that actually say about the fact that we do have an audit office and it's yet not used to actually look at what the government does to see if we do have the spending's there, a department for government expenditure and to keep things in place. And this is one thing that Trumpet Patriots are looking at doing. I'll say straight up front, because people get to a stage in these things where they just sort of disengage. But people say, oh, Clive's a millionaire, and he's got all this stuff going on. And it's all about him, okay? I'm going to get this right out of the business straight away. At least you know who you're dealing with Clive, whereas all these other parties and their faceless millionaire mates that are behind the scenes that are pulling the strings, you don't know who you're dealing with. If you've got a problem with the Trumpet of Patriots, you know who to go and talk to about he's the boss or he's the bloke that's running it. Clive's also said to us, we run our campaigns as independents that represent our own people, because that's what the whole thing about the Trumpet of Patriots is about, representing our people and getting back to a stage of making sure that we have manufacturing, making sure that the school system's right, making sure that we have freedom of speech, making sure that we have democracy. Isn't that a great word? Now, this is what I'm saying. So straight up front, you know where it's coming from, you know who's involved, and you know where the buck stops. Whereas other major parties, no one has a clue. Very clandestine. A lot of faceless men, as Kevin Rudd put it, and people don't know how it's run, why it's run the way it is, and the decisions that are made and the processes for them. So I just want to put that up front. Bill?
I think one of the other things is just talking about the audit office there with the state government, but I mean, we're also got the federal government expenditure, and we do have so much money going out to third parties to deliver services. And like you say, there's never a proper audit. There's hardly any KPIs. And I'll just go back to a state issue. It's like with juvenile crime and also the children on the street. So you've got these NGOs that are there to provide a place for these kids to go to. It's called Resi Care. And I know in Cairns we've got about 13 providers, and I think the general figure is around between $180,000 to $200,000 per bed per year goes to these NGOs. But we really don't know how much of that money goes to actually the service versus paying for all the expenditure, wages, and admin of those things. And then I suppose you've got that system. Then you go to the federal system. We've got even a bigger system of grants and third party providers, and that's not, like you're saying, not really audited. And we need to understand where our money is going to.
We don't know. Non-government organisations, I think back in 2019, I asked a question in Parliament about how many organisations that we sponsor and how many are exist in Queensland, and what is the depth and how much money do we actually put in there, and what do we do and use to measure that. The parliamentary library couldn't even tell me. There was over 25,000 not-for-profit organisations that we know of. There was so much that was going on as far as, not understanding where things are, the price, the cost, everything else. I just couldn't believe that we're spending all this money, but we're not tracking it. We don't find out what the KPIs are, what actually does that entail, what does that give the Queensland people for their money. It just goes on and on. I remember reading just briefly a thing about transition to success. Was one provider who done some stuff with youth, as you were just saying. Back in 2018, there was a document that came out and it had their first interim report telling everybody what they did, recidivism events, males, females, scantily clad document. Then Corinne McMillan, back in, I think it was in March 2023, she was the assistant minister and brought up the fact that they'd spent $60 million, $60,100,000 or something that they'd spent. And if you go back to 2018, in the records, they had a $10 million budget from the government. And it's funny how from that time to when Corinne done that speech, there's a $10 million increment of expense every year. Like, it's just a round figure of $10 million. That's what I could find. That's what I've seen in from what you actually deduct. Like when it started in 2018, you go, well, right, okay.
But the thing is, that's Queensland. But then when you go to the federal government, you've got to multiply what's going on by a factor of about 7 or 8, because I think over the last 8 or 9 years, the revenue for the federal government's gone from about $250 billion a year. It's now pulling in $700 million a year, and we still haven't got enough money to do what we want. We're actually going into debt. So, where is it all going, and how is it being spent? I mean, this should be on the lips of every voter in saying, well, where's the money going to? Because I'm not better off. The country is not better off.
People want to shun politics because of the BS that goes on. But look, I said to one guy the other day here out at the mines, he said, "Oh, I don't get into politics much." I said, "Well, more for you. Every time you turn your tap on or turn your light switch on, politics has got a whole huge bearing on, how that's delivered, what the cost is, how much you're allowed to have, how much you can use, or down the track if you can use it at all in certain ways. When there's a drought, what do? You're not allowed to turn your sprinklers on. When there's something going on with electricity because there's too much southeast air conditioning going on, they want to load shed power and shut things down. Look, people don't understand. Even the Queensland government, I think they run. The last time I did a check, that it cost about 59 billion to run, and they actually generate around about 54 billion. There's a shortfall of around about $5 billion. So this stuff comes from somewhere. You see all those yellow trailers on the side of the road that create revenue. They're trying to get revenue because their business model doesn't even pay for itself. Yet we as the people of Queensland think that's a great thing. Like we're not pulling in our costs. We're throwing money out where we don't even know. Like I just said, have a look at the NGOs and all the stuff that's going on. There's all this money going out, but no one can tell you the true depth and the width of what we're actually spending, why we're spending it, what we actually get out of it as taxpayers, what we actually get out of it as people that have to go to work and pay exorbitant money on fuel, on insurance, the cost of living, rates. We've got farmers in Mackay here. 2 years ago, they're paying $12,200 for rates. Now they're paying $57,000 for rates 2 years later.
But they must be getting a lot more service.
No, their service is nothing. And this is what I'm trying to say. It's like these people are trying to stay competitive in a cane industry where, one, fuel prices are going up, two, insurances is going up, there's the unstableness of the market. The mills can't mill the actual product, so they've got, standover, thousands of tons of standover in the cane. The insurance premiums, the interest rates have gone up as well. The way that they borrow money and the way that they deal with things, parts because of COVID, supposedly, hard to get, has all gone up. I went to a place, Snap-on, to get some tools the other day. Bought a tool, right? Now, this is just off the cuff. I said, oh, a nice toolbox. Snap-on toolboxes, right? $37,000 for a toolbox. You can't even fathom it, right? This is just a toolbox. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm just saying these are the sort of, this is the whole way that people have to live. This is the current system or situation that they're in. So it's not easy. And we're not really doing anything as people. We think, oh, yeah, I know, no, everyone's got a full belly. It's all easy. If something goes wrong, for now. But we're fast becoming into a situation where it's funneling down, where everything on the rest of the world stage is bringing us into an alignment where we are going to then have to toe the line. And I tell you what, we are not a country that is in a great position to be able to do so. And these elections, everyone that goes past, everyone may think, oh, yeah, we're just swapped between the two major parties. It's great. Labor will do this and then Liberal will do this and then there's this correction. Well, it's not. It doesn't change the world stage and it doesn't change our position and how we're actually looked at as a real player and as a country of people that need to look after each other and understand where our future's going, Bill, because we don't.
I think the other thing too is a lot of people will just consider, well, I'll just pester the government to give us more relief, or they'll give us some benefit to appease us or whatever. But the trouble is, it's like all this money in regards to rebates and that for our power bills over the last couple of years. I mean, the Queensland government's loaded us up with $1,000. The federal government gave us about 300, and I think there's still another lot feeding in at the moment. So it sort of softened the blow. But eventually that's going to run out. I mean, even the $1,000 was only available to the state government, the Queensland government, because they upped the royalties on coal. So it gave them a bit of a bonus. But once that money runs out and your power bill goes, suddenly you're not getting those rebates and you're stuck with the full cost. That's going to really hurt. And I think the other people are not thinking about, well, yeah, well, they're giving us money to offset it, but why is it going up in the first place? Why is it on such a trajectory? And they got us have a look at the of the different parties in regards to, well, you've delivered policies that have caused this, and you're not doing anything to wind it back or address it.
I'll give you one prime example: cost of living and housing. Right now, you have your what's the name tax on your you pay your X amount of percentage on your tax when you sell your house. Your stamp duty. That's it. Sorry, I've been on night shift. You'll have to excuse my slow-minded at the
when you buy it anyway.
Stamp duty, righto, boom. So, when was the last time that Queensland had looked at stamp duty to make sure that we were up with making sure that we weren't paying money on prices that 2006 was the last time. They haven't adjusted since 2008. They've been gouging the Queensland public for all those years. House prices have gone on a trajectory like this at a 60% curve, right? And they're still back. So there's all this media in the middle that they've been making money on, and they shouldn't have been. I asked a question in Parliament, why haven't we adjusted it to the median house price of today rather than leaving this so people have to pay more on stamp duty? Go back to where I told you earlier about that cost of that $59 billion and that shortfall, and wonder why that we didn't adjust things back and we should have done it per annum. Now, if it had been us that done that, we didn't adjust something or we didn't pay our dues or we were gouging the system, there's a thing called the courts and the law, and there's also jail and the outcomes for that. But it's okay when it comes from the other side. It's like when people hand out interest rate cuts. They don't hand them until way down the track, but as soon as the RBA adjusts the interest rate, you're paying that extra price the next day. Come on. What a disgusting and disgraceful way of being able to treat the public. And it's our own ignorance that allows this to happen. Because
I think that is really the problem, is people are not engaged enough. They've never learned anything in regards to the political system in their schooling, in their civics. They barely, they resent almost having to go and vote. And then when they get a government that brings stuff on that puts hardship in life, they just whine about it, but they don't go and learn, well, how am I going to address this, and how am I going to make come the next election, how am I going to address this with the candidates and get the right person into the job?
Yeah, but the noose gets tighter. The external side of it, the external global side of it, bringing in more, because it's all driven by debt. You said it earlier, we had this money from the coal industry. Well, no, we didn't. We took money from somewhere else and gave it away to people to buy an election, or at least change an outcome, which was crazy, because have a look at the debt. The debt's still there. The debt's still controlling us. The debt comes with conditions. You don't just get debt and everyone just pats you on the back and says, debt's good to have, which we've had governments tell us. What a load of rubbish. We know what debt does. It plays with the way that you engage with other countries, and the people that own the debt, they expect things from you. They expect a certain way of governance to be provided, because if you don't, they change the interest rates. They change your credit rating. They can call in the debt, or they can stop supply and no longer borrow you money. And that you yourself know that, you don't want to be in a situation like that. And then the whole system starts collapsing around you because you've actually stood up. And this is another thing that, we've got to start paying down debt. And I think the Trumpet of Patriots are talking about it, and that they want to try and do it. And I think we should be looking at paying down debt. It's like we got to tighten our belts as a nation and say, look, We just can't have that path out the front anymore that Freddie Jones wants to wheel his, walk his dog down every second Friday. We just can't have this or have that. Let's have a look at what we can do about paying down our debts and putting ourselves in a better position. So then we can actually reduce, hopefully, taxes and make ourselves in a better position financially across the board so that the government's not trying to gouge us at every single position and every single angle. And then we'll all start coming back into a place of realignment and things, the natural order of things should balance out. But you just can't keep going into debt. You don't, even with the way that we've got immigration, 30% higher than any other country. I think, Canada's only 21, 22%. You don't buy a bird without a cage. We're pushing boundaries on every single front. That puts pressure back on the family unit, back onto businesses, back onto people, and we can't say that we haven't got it great here because we do. We have. You can go anywhere. Anyone's going to give you a hand. Most places that you go to, you're not living in violence and war-torn countries and getting shot at. And the point of it is you're going to have to preserve this, our culture, our way of life, make it right. You've got to have the coal industry because none of this other stuff even exists without the coal industry. And stop the environmental crap and saying that we're vandals. Yeah, we have to at this time because we don't have an alternative. And wind and solar aren't an alternative. They're just a petroleum, hydrocarbon-based alternative that costs more than they actually, their footprint never even pays for itself. So why are we kidding ourselves and trying to redistribute money? That's just stupid. It's an experiment in lunacy. I think we just have to look at it, rationalise where we are, and governments have to start taking accountability. But people need to understand education, as you said, is a major thing. We just don't do it. We don't have enough interaction of it. And if people actually seen it for what it was and what it is and what we're actually getting from this and the debt, the outcomes of the societal changes and everything of what the government's imposing on us, they'd go, no way. And we should be saying no way. Major parties are swinging back the pendulum for how long, and we're still in that much crap that we can't even fathom it. We'll never dig ourselves out of it in the next 30 years unless we start making changes, Bill.
I think one of the other big problems is they keep saying that, well, if we want to get things improved, better government services, we've got to get more money. Or if we don't get more money, we've got to cut services. But that's not really true because there's so much waste in regards to there's so much poor spending and also, like I say before, unaccountable. The way we're spending it and where it's been spent isn't accountable. If you just look at defence, I mean, I spent 24 years in the Defence Force, and I can tell you we've squandered more money, right, than we've ever spent on capital equipment or improving, our capability. I mean, you only have to look just look at the last 8 years, right? Go back to about 2016 or a bit before, when we're just talking about the submarines. I think we started about 2014 with Abbott. And there was, the Collins class were coming to an end. We're going to have to replace it. There was discussions in regards to another conventional because we weren't really into the nuclear sort of thing because it was all too expensive and too hard to go to. So no, we decided they got rid of Abbott and Turnbull went out on the system to go to Europe again. And I mean, last mob I'd ever buy any capital defence solution off is the Europeans. It always ends up a real big problem. But so what do? They decide that we'll take this Barracuda that's a nuclear class submarine and we'll put a diesel in it. No, like soon as you start mucking around the equipment and modifying before it even comes off the drawing board, it costs you an arm and a leg. So we squandered all that. But I tell you what, some people made some good money out of it. That liaison company that was between the French and the Australians, where Mr. Pine was a party to, they made a bloody fortune, being the liaison. We ended up with no submarine. We had to give give the French billions of dollars, and now we're still into the mess we are.
Oh, and everything that we buy is outdated and it's superseded and it's on the scrap heap on every other country. And here we are, here they are trying to pull them off, sending us the parts to fix the rubbish that we've got. Like, come on, wake up to ourselves. Like, and that's how it's all done. You know, I put that bill in at Parliament, went in front of the committee, the Triple P bill, which is a private-public partnership bill, and I said to him, we got to stop wasting money. And what happens is it would basically look at things that we spend or the government spends on, so that we can understand where the money's going, or that they change the arrangement with the spending. Like I say, what happens is we get this blowout at the end of it. The cost of materials are going up because of COVID, blah, 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 or, the world stage has changed. Well, righto, as I said in the bill, buy it all up front. You know what you're in for. We know what the scope is. Why do we have to have a 50% blowout when that purchase price could be the way that the government actually deals the money out? Is to say, number one is you buy all these materials at the beginning of the contract so that you've got them, so that we're not subject to an increase in margin because of the world economic scene or some unknown, the dog grabbed your homework type situation and it blowing out 50 or 35 million or whatever. It's the same with this. We don't seem to have. It seems that everything in industry or everything outside that the actual we do as privatisation, or private people or business outside, we have to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure that that's the way we do it, because we have to employ people, we have to be viable, we have to, be buoyant as far as it. And we all know we're only one deal away from going broke, right? But it's just the government doesn't have to worry. We just go and dig into the eternal pit of borrowings from whatever source, and then, we just have to sit back and cop whatever they want to dish out. I think the whole thing needs to be looked at in a different way and run as an actual business. Like I said, the cost of the way things are, it's just not right. It doesn't measure up. It does not fit for purpose. There's a lot of waste, as you said. It doesn't really give us anything at the end of it. And it's in all the confusion and everything else, a lot of other businesses or a lot of other countries are making a lot of money out of Australia because our professionalism, we used to be right up there and we seem to have slipped. We don't make good decisions. We're trying to put things in place that really aren't fit for purpose. And, at the end of it, the poor old taxpayer pays and the debt just keeps getting racked up, Bill.
Do you think it's a matter of that they just play us for mugs and that's it? Like the politicians, the bureaucrats, and then the people who supply to the government just think they're mugs. They'll just keep paying their taxes.
Well, that's what we're doing. But I think too, the government looks at our futures and says, we've got all this wealth. We've got all this coal reserve. We've got all these rare minerals and rare earth reserves. So, it doesn't matter if we make mistakes. We're going to have going into the future where there's going to be more mining than there's ever been, supposedly, in this renewable setting that they've put forward. But that's not the way to do it. Other countries have taken these mineral wells and wealth and they've actually made it so that all the people in the whole country have benefited from it, that there's a full economic structure there to put in place for all of the people that live in the country, and we don't have that. All we have is like people coming in and taking gas and for whatever price, and we're setting all these. We have people coming in and buying our land, they're buying our resources. Other countries won't allow it. Well, look, is it that bad? Are we that bad at managers that we can't take the richest, biggest island in the world that's got more of everything than anyone else has got, including land mass, right, and turn it into a viable, a working, viable
wealth creation
country? Yeah, and demonstrate to everyone else. But no, we don't do it. It's as if we're being controlled right about across the board by someone who would never like to see that. Only have fuel for 2 weeks. We've got all these situations that arise. There's more fuel down in South Australia in brown coal in a process that could run both South Australia and the Northern Territory way into 2060s, but we're not doing anything with it. We've got sugarcane. We've got all these different science and all the rest of it, most of it done on the Great Barrier Reef that sucks money out of us. Yet we've got all this stuff, and what an absolute farce that is. Every year it comes around. Yet when I started Parliament, the problem with pigs and feral animals was what? It was less than 100 million. Now it's grown from 106 million, I think it was back in 2019, to over $142 million in damage. Yet nothing gets done about it. No, you don't get. There's no one gets contracts to be able to go and do it. It's all this hidden agenda type stuff that people go and do stuff at the reef. There's not one thing at the reef I can tell. Anyone tell you, there's that much water going there, moving back and forth. There's no amount of money, no scientist in any lab coat, whether it's black, white, grey or whatever, that's going to be pushing buttons on a computer or making calculations that's going to change one jot or one tittle of what the Great Barrier Reef does. Trust me on that.
Well,
and the money that we're throwing there is a bottomless pit of absolute waste that we could have been doing something with, transforming our sugarcane, making stuff out of our raw materials, taking metal and coal and doing the iron boomerang and making pig iron and actual value-adding products here in Australia, manufacturing it ourselves, selling it on the world stage and making jobs and making money for ourselves. Instead, we're kowtowing to all this stupid rot that makes absolutely no sense. It's never going to change. What stupidity?
Well, that's one of the things in regards to the Commonwealth has signed us up to so many international agreements over the last 20 or 30 years. And then they seem to sort of they sign these agreements, then they give it to the bureaucracy to create legislation and regulation. And it seems to gather steroids because if you look at some of the World Heritage stuff, the onus on the participants isn't as bad as you think in a lot of cases. What's happened is the bureaucrats have got that and started to write laws to make more restrictions on us as a people and that.
But why? Why restrict us from anything? Well, why aren't they giving us the opportunity to use our brains and our initiative as Australians have since the beginning of Australia to actually go forward and move forward and create wealth and create a place that's worthy of what it is? No, they shouldn't be holding us back, and that's what the whole problem of it is. Government's job's not to do that. But why are they taking this position?
But the thing is, with governments, and especially bureaucracy, their prime aim is to get bigger, have more people in it, elevate the pyramid so you're on more money, and we've got big government from this. And that's one of the things we've got to look at is, do we need the size of government?
Well, I'll tell you something. I'll give you a practical example that actually happened. What happened to Germany after World War II? What was the way that they built back the way that they did? They got rid of all the government, got rid of all of the green tape, red tape, and all the strings attached, and built back Germany. That's what they did, and that's how it rebounded in 10 years. Whereas its neighbour over the Iron Curtain didn't go anywhere. Right? That's the difference between success and not success.
It was also helped by the Marshall Plan, both in Germany and Japan. The Marshall Plan did lay all that groundwork out for them, but like you say, there was nothing standing in the way of them getting things done.
Exactly. And you said just before, we sign up to things. I want to know. Has anybody out there, and I'd love people to chime in. I know there's probably a fair few people looking, Bill, but let me talk to one thing in particular, that not one government that I've spoken to or I've heard over the TV. It's a difficult topic that people don't want. What's happening with the pandemic treaty of Australia that they're engaged with the WHO at the moment, that's going to be signed in May, which is, we're days away from it. Right, days, weeks, days away from. So which government, whichever gets in, what's their position on that, and what does that mean for Australians? Because I know I've read part of that pandemic treaty, and I understand that they can inform trade embargoes, they can shut off international waters, they can stop any country that doesn't want to participate in their treaty or fails to enact whatever they decide they're going to enact on the time to 2 weeks of diesel, mate. You know, when the water shuts down and the plants shut down and
they can actually send people into your country, whether it's the military, police, or whatever.
No, foreign troops. Where's the foreign troops going to come from? What are they going to do?
That's scary.
What position will they take? What does that mean? How do they subdue the country? You know, how much latitude have they got to enact whatever they've got to do to make what they want to make happen? This is what, but no one's talking about this, Bill. Here we are, we're all talking about, oh, you know, we got to make a little park up the road for little Johnny. If you do that, we're gonna vote you in, or, you know, we're going to make sure that certain amount of schooling funding is going to be done, and we're going to have a couple of different flags flying in the front yard and all that. Mate, it pales into insignificance when you know that the sovereignty of the front and back door of your country and your country as a whole is looking to be administered and taken over by a full outside, whether you call it a corporation, an entity, or a government body or a non-government body, and it's about to happen. Yet the terms of reference and the terms of engagement between our major parties and those people have not even been discussed to the public in such a short term, at such a very important time of an election, and no one's even got a policy to say, hey, what is going to happen here and how are we actually going to enact this, and what's the people's stand on this, and what is acceptable and what's not? Nothing. Zero.
I think it's been brought up in Parliament a couple of times, maybe by Roberts and Antic and Rennick and Hanson. They sort of brought it up, but it's never got any real airing because it's always seems to be closed down. And this is a really scary thing in regards to the people just don't know what their government is really doing, and they're not engaged enough to find out. They just, well, all we've got to do is put someone in power and they'll look after us.
Yeah.
Well, they're not really looking after our interests most of the time.
Oh, well, there wouldn't be so many people, you know, homeless, lost cause and committing suicide, mental health issues everywhere. The way that the situation is right across the board with you know, societal issues that we have. And you know, we're not even looking after the grassroots stuff, yet we've got people that are way out of their depth trying to make decisions on stuff like we've just mentioned. What chance have we got? Like, seriously, none of it's being taken very seriously at all, and none of it's being communicated across the board as far as the constituents of Australia. You know, all we're getting is governments with the stuff that happened with COVID, you know, and that was a disgrace in itself, but that's something that hopefully we'll have an inquiry on down the track. But Western Australia, so much going on around the place that they're trying to ban everyone's guns. No reason, no cause, no situational awareness or background in it. We're just going to do it because we can. Why? We're doing all this stuff that's peripheral. We're never dealing with anything. It's as if there's no one held to account. I think society and community need to put down a layer of terms of references of what needs to be looked at, and the government need to do it. Not in a way that's a token gesture, a way that actually explains to the people where the money has gone to, where it comes from, and what it actually, you know, does for the people. What does it actually do? What real traction or what real outcome do we have out of it? But we don't have any of that. And you know
we don't even have any accountability from the people when something happens. Like you just talked about the COVID. We're just starting to see stuff now that's come out in Victoria where the Davis from the Liberal Party, after 5 years under freedom of information, has finally got some documentation that shows that the decisions for curfews and lockdowns was never based on any medical information.
Yeah, but Bill, the National Cabinet was an abomination. They took the power of the people, the duly elected representatives, and put it behind closed doors. I asked a question in Parliament. because it wasn't actually held in confidence the way that parliamentary privileges and all that were, and it was Justice A. White that actually said, the structure of the National Cabinet isn't held in a secret. What's the name with and it's closed to the public. And then I asked the question, and because it's a 30-day receipt time from them, within that time, the whole thing had become clandestine and not open to the public, and all the transcripts were sealed. I asked that question. Why is there an actual area where the people that have elected these people in a time of pandemic can't see what's actually being discussed and what goes down? That's ridiculous.
But the other thing, the National Cabinet is not constitutional anyway.
No, it's not.
It doesn't bloody exist. And what happened?
It's an abomination. And it has been since the beginning. And then that's why old mate took on all these portfolios, because it was the way it was. And then I asked the Premier, what's going on in there, And I said to her, you say there's no coercion. And I told the then Premier, I said, to put a mark on someone's body or something in someone's body is an act of modern day slavery. And I never got received any feedback from that, because it was. And the people that suffered and all the stuff that went on, where are we going with all this? No one sort of said a thing. And the government is just, blind eye. Like you're saying, now it's coming out. No scientific. We asked about the science. We asked about which shot was the best and blah, blah, blah. I tried to get a South Australian, an Australian-based vaccine that had no side effects, that was absolutely effective and absolutely was safe for every single public servant, all the people that were working in the mines that needed this to keep going on so they could meet their commitments. We worked on it. We even crowdfunded $1 million to put the applications in to the CDC and to APRA and all the rest of it to get this stuff passed. Already 6 million doses had been given out in Iran, and guess what? They just basically blocked us and laughed and said, no, we've already got a safe and effective vaccine, and we've got the science to prove it. There you go.
And we're paying plenty of taxpayers' money for it.
Yeah, disgraceful. Where's the democratic process in that? We didn't even give it a run.
But going back to the National Cabinet, the other thing that was wrong with the National Cabinet, it sidelined all the ministers of the Crown in the federal government. Basically, all those people who are ministers of the Australian Parliament were sidelined, while just the premiers and the Prime Minister met and made decisions and completely cut them out. The other thing that happened too, before the pandemic, we actually had a pandemic plan. It had been done years before, and we didn't even visit that. We just wiped that and just went straight.
Because there was another plan that rolled in, and if you actually go back, I think it was in February 16th, 2014, I believe it was, or it might have been actually 2016 in the national press documents. They've actually got together the World Health Organization, the BAS, everywhere else, the Gates Foundation. They actually went through and done a pandemic plan and how they'd rolled out a pandemic. All the documents are there.
But Australia had its own. Australia actually had its own.
Well, it was probably born out of half of that stuff as it was anyway.
It was done earlier.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I went to the CQIMR, the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, and we went there, and there was a physicist there called James Robertson, I believe his name was, and he had all the stuff there. He had a pandemic rollout plan, and it was introduced. I've still got the pictures. People want to doubt me. I've got the pictures because I was on the Health and Environment Committee. Yep, introduced by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Burnett Foundation. And it had everything to do with vaccination rates, lockdown rate, masks, and all this stuff. It was delivered to 193 countries, and that was some of the basis on what I can understand was some of the basis on what people were making decisions out of. So it was all there. We might have had it, but it was totally superseded because I've seen the stuff that was going through the QIMR, and I've seen where it came from and all that. I've got the pictures of it. And, you got to ask yourself some questions. Well, where do these people get off on being the independent arbiter on running the pandemic? What's their background as far as the science and all the rest of it, and as far as lockdowns and mask wear and all that? How does that fit into every government across the world and the way that they dealt with the pandemic? I can't. I'm still trying to come to grips with it.
Going forward with this election, we've seen, and in past election we've seen Clive Palmer under the United Palmer Australian Party, and that spend a lot of money on advertising. You've obviously would have seen some of the advertising in print and in other media sort of thing. Do you think he sort of hit the mark enough in regards to the messaging and that, or do you think it's been a little bit maybe not directed well enough?
Look, no disrespect to anybody. I would have taken a different approach, certainly. I think people need to understand that Clive's always used his money to try and help people. The stuff in COVID, $100 million he put out for, was it 36 million or 34 million doses of hydroxychloroquine? He scoured the earth for it, brought it over here to give it to Australians and to make sure that we were right. And from what I can gather, the government disallowed it. So, hey?
Made it categorised it as S4 poison.
Yeah, correct. So that's, you can't say he hasn't had a go. And people that have said that, it's all about money. Well, last time I seen it, people don't go around spending $100 million on all of the population and not, without prejudice, just everyone. That was all of us, right? You got to give the man a bit of credit for that. That's
I do. I give him credit where he puts his money where his mouth is.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the advertising campaign.
Yeah, and that's what I remember.
I'm
getting to the fact that Clive does. Some of the signs and that, look, it could have been done probably a little bit different. It was squeezed into a last minute thing. I just hope people understand the message that really makes sense, and that there is an alternative out there that will take away from the two major parties. Now, which way you dress that up, you can say it whichever you want. I know a lot of people don't probably get that understanding, but that is a really big thing. And I think that, going in to vote this time in this election, everyone needs to understand that there's an alternative. We don't need to keep going to the Lib Lab, red and blue, Coke and Pepsi, let's say. Yeah, we're doing the Coke and Pepsi thing every time, and we shouldn't be. We should be actually going with someone that's got our own best interest at heart, the country's long-term interests and direction at heart, and we should be going with people that, like myself, people that are, we've proven ourselves to try and make it the best we can. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. I don't think anyone is, and we're far from perfect as far as governmental control and governmental overreach and everything else. So there's a lot of work to be done in that space. Clive's tried to put the stuff out there. I just hope it hits the way it should hit. Yes, there is shortcomings in it. Yes, it doesn't probably. Some of the things are hard to read. I've made myself pretty vocal on some of the stuff that's been out there. I drive past and can't read it properly. That doesn't really send a good message to me. There's other faces.
What I was getting at, the 2022 campaign was, I thought, much more effective in regards to using those eighth of a page banners and that just had a few words and key points.
Yes.
But these full pages, I think, like you might look over it once, but next time you see it, you just slip past it. So the slogan type things and changing it, incrementally, sort of, I think works better than just this great big full page with I've got to get my glasses out and read some of the stuff, sort of thing. Whereas most people just need to be hit straight in the eye, big bold lettering. This, about 4 or 5.
I agree. Well, like I said, I didn't have much to do with the marketing strategy or the campaign strategy as far as that. Could it be better? Oh, everything can be better. He's obviously taken the Carol Shelby approach and said to himself, if more is better than too much should be just right. Works with V8, doesn't work with media, but, well, that's what we've got to put up with, and that's what it is. So biggest thing is hats off for him having a go. You know, now that the laws have changed to really sort of strike people like Clive out, he's given it his best foot forward, and he's tried to go forward with as many grassroots people that he could to make a change. I just hope that the people out there can see that, and I hope they support that. And I don't think they're going to be disappointed with the change when they get it. They've just got to have the nous and a little bit of intestinal fortitude to make that change. Bill?
I think the other thing is too, talking to people who use social media and YouTube a lot more and that, there has been some good messaging there. It's just that probably the people you want to win over who are sort of the old sort of half rusted on Labor Liberal. I mean, a lot of Labor people who've got traditional values, they are not progressive as the Labor Party makes out is. So there's a lot of people in that sort of age group who still run with the old media that could have been hit better with that sort of messaging, and they're probably the people you want to force up, get them to change their vote.
Yeah, I think you're chasing that swing. I understand.
Yeah. So
I understand the old values.
Anyway,
well, that's where we grew up, in those old values as well. And it's too late now. Well, whatever they do now, from now on in, it's like, I could ring Clive and them tomorrow and have a chat with them and make some recommendations to what we could do. But certainly, I hope at the end of the day, no matter how you put it down, it's always going to be up to the people to make decisions. And like I said, at least you've got a face to Clive. You know who you're dealing with. And if things go wrong, he's going to cop the rap, right? Whereas the other parties, the people that run them from behind the scenes and all the rest of it, those faceless men, as Kevin Rudd put it, they never cop the rap. And they never stand up in public, and they never put that foot forward to try and do it. It's all done from a very arm's length type clandestine situation, and I think people need to understand that that's got to stop.
I think one of the other surprising things is it wasn't until the day that the Liberals even started talking about defence, and Labor doesn't really want to talk about it that much anyway. But I mean, we're now in the voting period. It seems to me that all these policies, the key policies, have got to be out there well before this stage, and things like, I think with Trump with the Patriots and that, it's been pretty clear messaging on immigration and that. It's not beating around the bush. It just says cut it 80%. And people can argue whether it needs to be that high or low or whatever. But there's the message. There's the thing. There's no if, buts, or maybe. When you've got the major parties say, "Oh, we'll reduce it down by 50,000 or something," like maybe. And when does that happen? Because with all these things have got to be put in place with most of these decisions that they do. So they might be winding it down by 50,000, but that might not happen until 2028 or something like that. And meanwhile, people are just flooding in and driving up our housing prices and that. And it seems to me that most of the problems we've got have been basically caused by government policy. Do you think there's got to be more emphasis with actually winding back a lot of laws and regulations that have got us into this mess?
And it's not just the laws and regulations, it's the definites. We're going to do this by this time, this much. Rather than, it's like the guy Walkins, he does this thing on, he says, put your bets down, he's an old man, he's going, I can do between 300 and 400 push-ups, And the guy gets, all these people put all this money down ready for him to go. And he gets down on his thing and does 4 push-ups. And the guy says, yeah, no, come on, old man, you haven't even started. He said, no, I said between 300 and 400. And I've done 4, so I've won the money, and he walks away.
The numeral 3, you fools.
So that's what I'm saying. And it's this is the sleight of hand that can happen when people and government say, oh, no, this is what I said. You lost your money. And that's the way it's done. There's no clear definition or divisive way of being able to hold anyone on account. We did this and we did this, and we didn't do. It doesn't matter what come out of it. We don't talk about that. See, this is where the problem is. Government measures success in expenditure rather than how much they saved and what they actually achieved. This is what we don't understand. This is what people don't cotton onto. They just don't see it for what it really is. 300 or 400 push-ups, right? Between 300 and 400. And four will get the job done. Okay?
But the other thing
but the expectation of those people was this old man was going to do 400 push-ups. Between 300 and 400.
300 and 400 push-ups. That's
exactly.
What they
exactly.
But he only said
now,
3.
that's what I'm trying to tell you. And the old bloke grabbed the money and walked away. You may as well say that he's the government and all the people out there that put all that money there were the voters. And that's exactly how it works. Exactly how it works. I cannot give you a better analogy or a better example of just how that stuff works. Now, that situation is happening all over the place because people get mixed up in the interpretation. And as I said, governments don't tell you what the actual involvement was or what happened, what the outcome was, what they actually achieved, how that helps society, how that helps science, what it did for the Great Barrier Reef, what it did for the koalas, what it did for whatever. They don't tell you. They just tell you, this is how much we spent. It's great.
Well, that's the same things like childcare. We're going to put another $8 billion into childcare.
Of course we are. There you go. There you go. There it is.
That's wonderful. But
yeah,
you're not going to get anything out of it because
everyone's out there going, oh, we're going to benefit from this. It's just like these blokes that put all this money down to say that this old guy won't do these push-ups. We know where it's a sure thing. Absolutely positive. You know?
But you can bet your bottom dollar that operators are going to put their prices up.
Of course. And it won't be just any operator. It'll be the operator that it won't be just any operator. It'll be the operator that's aligned with the politics of the government of the day. That's what it'll be.
And big time operators.
Yeah, correct. And this is what people, it shouldn't be that way. It's got to be an open playing field where everyone gets treated the same. If you can provide a service, regardless of your politics or regardless of what you should be given the opportunity. Nepotism and the ways of showing, graft or whatever you want to call it, it shows its ways in different ways. And that's not the way that this country was built, and it's not the way it should be run. It should be run where everyone gets a fair go, and it's open, it's honest, it's transparent, and everyone's accountable. But it's not in that position. It's gotten worse rather than getting better.
I think the other problem is there's a lot of policies out there and a lot of gift giving that only benefits some people in the system. Like if you look at childcare, right? All right, that's for people who've got 2 incomes, sending someone to work. It doesn't help the person who decides that the wife wants to stay home and look after the kids, or if other situations maybe where I can think in my daughter's case, she if one of them had to give up work, it wouldn't be her because her money is twice as much or more than the other half. So, but the thing is, there's also a lot of people in rural Australia that gets nothing out of half of these benefits, sort of thing. I mean, there is no child care. There is no lots of employment opportunities for people.
No beds for kidney dialysis. No beds for kidney dialysis. I mean, Capella's a great little town, right? We don't even have a supermarket. We've got the service station and we've got the cafe and bits and pieces. These places run on an oily rag. It's just like they've got nothing. You go to they don't have coffee shops on every corners. They don't have people walking around in suits, but they get the job done. And they make a lot of, they grow a lot of food, a lot of sorghum and a lot of stuff here. They grow a lot of cattle here that feeds all these other places, but these other places give them no recognition on the fact of how they live, what they have to put up with, what they don't have in their actual town, and what they go without to actually live here. To make these other people's lives such a cake of convenience. And this is a problem. Again, our education level on how things work is just not there. We don't understand what people do. We don't understand where cows come from, what sugar's made, all the rest of it. Yeah.
I think the other slap in the face is too, like a lot of people in rural areas can't get those sort of benefits. But when it comes time for the kids to go to university, they're paying the bills or even high school paying the bills for them to go somewhere. Now, if they had shared some of that money that went on childcare that went into the households in general, when it got to the stage where their children were going to have to go somewhere for high school or a bit more travel than that, well, then they would have fun. They would have basically help create the wealth so they could do those things later on. So I think there's a complete imbalance in a lot of these policies.
Definitely. Where are they going to go to? There's nowhere for them to stay down there. That the cost of living is huge and it's absorbent. They can't just stay with someone. A lot of people down up here don't have those options. I think too, like you go back to what you were saying, it's getting sad when people are actually casting their vote because of the funding streams that they're getting. And this is another thing. This funding, it's just absolutely divisive. It's splitting everybody up. Governments are giving this funding out, and like I said, we're not building anything anymore. We're not. It's all based on a few different resources that we work: the cane industry, farming industry, the cattle industry, and all these industries that are all so poison to the rest of the global world. Coal industry. We've really got to start making sense of it. And I think the education in schools, they need to understand what the kids need to understand what all this means. I think that we've got to really get down to rock bottom, re-educate the whole community again from the start, and then work out the balance of the city and the country and work out and make sure that we've got it right going forward, because we can't keep living with our city brothers and our country brothers always at war. We're fighting on too many fronts. And the government's responsible for this too. No matter whether it's sex and gender, don't matter whether it's religion, don't matter whether it's Ukraine and Russia, don't matter whether it's abortion or not abortions. They're pitching these really bad, divisive ways of being able to split communities, and they're splitting all the communities all the time. You never see them say anything good about everyone coming together. You never see them, putting stuff out there about mental health and people's diets and the way that we live. And, they don't get involved in that, but they get really heavily involved in religion, all this divisive stuff. And it's really that's not good governance. It's, they're managing the chaos rather than managing a coherent society. And that is a real failure between.
I disagree. I disagree with that. I think they're creating the chaos.
I do. Really. But they're managing the chaos they created. Let me rephrase. And then this is that's the part that I can't stand. And I think that in itself it's deceptive. It's not really goes with the values of Australians. We always give each other a go. And you are right. I agree. They are. It's orchestrated more so than it is just come about. And that's a really bad thing that we need to really fix up. And going forward, there's more stuff caught with honey than there is with vinegar. And the stuff that we go through at the moment, the anger and the anguish, they just got to come clean, fess up and be honest about what's going on. And I think we need to move on. And I don't think that's going to happen with major parties. I think it's just not built into their DNA.
Well, just touching on the Constitution and the separation of powers, I mean, there's a lot of money to be saved if we got rid of some of the duplication. But a lot of that duplication's come about because of the revenue base that the feds have got. I mean, they collect between 90 and 95% of all revenue. And then they use that revenue to get their way with the states. The national curriculum, for instance, they basically coerce the states in, well, if you come into the national curriculum, we'll give you this bucket of money, that bucket of money. Yeah. So now you have a national curriculum coming out of Canberra. I mean, that's one of the things that should, go by the boards and go back to the Constitution. Education belongs to the states, and let them have competitive federalism. So they're contesting their ideas between the states in regards to who's got the best curriculum and who's getting the best results. Because I came from the era when the states ran the education system, and I came from West Australia, and they had a bloody good education system, and it's only been dumbed down in the last 10 years.
You don't have to go back far when we were actually, teaching Latin and Greek in schools. Well, manus the hand, caput the head, uh, like, yeah, pedis the foot, all this stuff, the Latin roots of what things are. Manus the hand is in manual labour, and all this stuff that we do. But now we've actually gotten to a stage where we've progressed so far that we're doing intermediate English at university.
It is really sad, and that's developed simply because the Commonwealth government has got into the mix.
Yeah, but
and
that's
had so much
that's what I'm
saved
saying.
dollars.
It's not fit for purpose. We're allowing this to happen. And, like half the people that I know now coming up through the ranks, flat spelling cat, right? This is what I'm getting at. It's because the education system's failed. They're dumbing us down. And people got to start understanding this. It's like, I remember the worst I've ever been abused was from the university there right next door to Parliament. I was standing on the president's balcony and a guy come past and he said, "Who are you?"
That's
And I told
QUT.
him, yeah. And he yelled at me, "Who are you?" And I told him who I was. And he said, "Oh, do you believe in climate change?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Because you know why?" I said, "We live on an Earth that has a tilted axis that does an elliptical orbit around a very temperamental sun." Right? And of course the climate's going to change. And he started sweating, UF and blah, 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 blah. Like there's the facts versus his reality and what actually is. And it's like, it didn't suit his agenda for me to tell him what really happens. And and that's the way they are. Instead of sitting back and saying, yeah, well, he's right.
All right.
There's a fair bit of truth in that because that's what it is. Because that's exactly what it is. Anyway.
Well, just moving to the outcome of the election. Although we've had 3 years of going backwards.
Three. Hang on, you got that
well,
right?
no, super fast. All right. I mean, the other lot weren't that good either. But we've been going backwards since we signed on to bloody Paris agreements and all those.
1973 or something roundabouts.
Really took off in about 2007. But going after this election, where do you think we'll be? Because I can't see the people of Australia being wise enough to actually turf either the big ones away or put someone in who at least has got a bit of a control over them into the right side of politics versus the green side and the left side of politics. So what's your prognosis for the election? Mine generally is the worst that can happen. The worst that's going to happen is probably going to happen with a minority Labor government with the Greens and Teals making us worse. There's also maybe there's a chance that the Libs can get in with a minority government and make a deal with someone, but their deal making is pretty garbage. But how do we get to a situation where a centre right to right sort of all these different groups can get to a 15% size where it can have a decent influence on whoever gets in? Where do you think we're going to be after this election?
No, there's never been a revolution fought on a full belly, number one. And I think people just, like you said, about apathy and apathetic natures. I'd like to think after COVID and after some of the stuff that's just came out there that people start to see that there hasn't been a genuine way of being able to go forward with what they did. I think you find that what's happening in America and what's happening on the world stage, I think that's got to have a extreme, profound influence on people. The way that the misinformation and disinformation laws, when you've got people talking about the government in such a bad way that the government have to silence them, once you silence people, you silence democracy. Once you silence democracy, we're in a bad place. I don't think if everyone out there tonight doesn't understand where we are, and I think that their own self-interest and selfishness makes them vote a certain way for the continuation of funding or continuation of what they believe is a better way of living. I think we're going to find ourselves in a lot of hot water. I don't think it's about centre right. I don't think it's about right or left anymore. I think it's more about them and us, to be quite honest. You know, Australia needs to get together as a combination or as a country and as a society and say, well, where do we sit with this and find the balance and the fairness between all that sides and actually get told the truth. Full disclosure on all these things rather than part disclosure and stop using the science as the way of, and I say that with the dollar sign in the front, not with the S. The predetermined outcomes that come from science because of the money and the way things are spent on science, that we just get an honest, open opinion and understanding of what goes on, why it's costing us, what the outcome is, what benefits it has for us, what it's going to do to us in the future, and so we can make an informed decision. Because I think people of Australia get too caught up in details that don't really give us, how would you say, structure of good governance going forward. It's all about patting each other on the back and doing favours and getting things for your community and saying this is great. Well, it's not about that. There's a bigger picture out there.
Especially
and this country, it's huge. And this country is a very wealthy, very well positioned country that could go a long way in the future in all the different economies. I think it's got to have more focus, more direction, more transparency, and a hell of a lot more honesty and people that are actually going to do the job. And there needs to be focus on what we're getting. And if it's not working, stop throwing money in it to save face and just own it and say that we stuffed up. We made a mistake here. Stop buying redundant materials or things that from other countries because we want to stay in favour with them. And we think we're doing the right thing because, spending that money puts us better on the world stage. Have a look at reducing debt and making sure that we're self-sufficient and that what we've got, we actually get the real value for it, not a government perverted value that gives someone a better deal at the back door somewhere or around the back or, however it works with what that's going on. There just needs to be some alignment of truth and openness about what's going on and about value for money and to be able to demonstrate value for money every time that they have a spend. Don't matter whether it's that much or, this much, but they can demonstrate what benefit and what that's going to do for the Australia as a whole. And I don't think we get any of that. I think it's just a real slap-up deal. And they've signed the paperwork. They've done whatever they've done behind the scenes. No one gets a say in any of it. And let's be truthful, there's no such thing as government money. It's taxpayers' money, which is our money. The Constitution the book needs to be open and the pages need to be leafed through so much so that they're actually fine and worn. And we need to get back to the original place of where we were, not where certain people or certain genders or certain, agendas want us to go to. Work it from the baseline, work it that it's going to be effective, it's going to be efficient, it's going to give us a good outcome. And these are the things that we struggle with because the questions never get asked in referendum that really need to be asked. It's really done about things that mean, they're hidden agendas and they've got there's other meanings in there rather than being honest with the people and really asking, is this the direction we want to go? Show us a plan. We never see a plan. These guys just go in there and fake it till they make it. Like, it's just crazy. I just don't understand. Sit down with smart people in business, that aren't necessarily connected to that business. So there's no insider trading. But there are people out there that understand that all these sort of pieces of the puzzle, whether it's our resources, whether our strong points or our weak points, bring it together to make sure that we've got jobs, that we've got futures, that we've got we can trade on the world market, that we are a force to be reckoned with, and that we are the people that we are. And I don't think we get given that choice and opportunity, Bill.
One of the other thing is you've been in state parliament and you're across all the issues and talking to your constituents. about state issues and that. How difficult do you find it when you're now campaigning in a federal election, and you find it's hard to engage people in moving up to that national and international level of governance that we need to be, rather than the real local sort of things that a lot of people are looking for at times? How do you direct them to?
It's hard because you can't get a big picture to someone in a 15-minute interlude. It just, or 15 seconds or 20 seconds when they're walking past. It's like tonight we've discussed a lot of information, and very relevant information that pertains to this election and every election. But how many people are going to get to sit down and look at it? How many people will be exposed to it? How many people will understand the direction of it? I try my best to talk to people on a large scale, but it's so difficult. Even though we're in an era of lots of social media and everything else, I'll share this with my page so people can go through it. It is long, but it's all relevant. It's just, sadly, people's attention spans aren't there. They'd rather scroll through and see someone fall off a motorbike, or, you know what I mean? Like, we have that luxury, and how long we're going to have that luxury for is really the biggest concern, because there's coming a time, the way that we've left things unattended. Let me put it that way. I believe it's unattended. Sooner or later, that comes back to bite you. No matter what you do, whether it's your dog, whether it's a pump that's pumping water out for your cattle, that's sitting out there doing its job, sooner or later, when you leave things unattended, it will fail. And when it does, there's always repercussions, and I think we're going that way. I think we've failed, and successive governments over a long time now, I think we've been pushed in a funnel that we shouldn't have been, and we shouldn't have bought into. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of money being spent. There's a lot of subsidies going out. There's a lot of unproven stuff happening, and we're paying for it. And I don't think we can afford to pay for it. I think every step we take has got to be measured, and it's got to be, classified with understanding and it's purposeful. And we're not doing that either. So hopefully people come around and start saying, we just need to change from Coke and Pepsi, and we need to get off that Coke and Pepsi bandwagon.
And I also think people need to realise, the federal government's gone from revenues of $250 billion, 10 years ago, up to 700, and we're getting nothing permanent, no wealth creation or that. It's just disappearing, and the worst thing is we're actually increasing our debt, and that's a real worry. So that's one of the things that people should do. I plead to people in regards to have a good look at what's going on in regards to this revenue raising, and then what we're getting out of it, sort of thing. Because that should be the first.
If you keep going, there's only one thing that can happen. That they're going to come and squeeze you more. They're going to squeeze you more for bad spending, for money that can't be recouped, for money that has no return on investment, for money that's been put out there for no real reason. It's just disappeared in the ether, and there's nothing coming back. Who do they turn to? They squeeze the taxpayer. You got to pay more. You've got to relinquish something or give over super. You got to, our super, everything needs to be looked at. The whole lot of it needs to be looked at, and the way that we're dealing with things, and we're not doing it. And it doesn't matter who these, between the red and the blue there, doesn't matter who gets in there. It's just a continuation on the same. It's just, one dips into one thing a bit more than the other, and it's really, there's nothing clear. There's nothing decided by the people. It's all decided by parties and all the rest of it. The party stuff gets me a little bit. The true representation of people is they vote for you, not really. They say that the party makes great decisions. Well, prove it. Prove it. I haven't seen many good decisions, and there's not a lot of people out there that are bouncing around with joy about their future. And what happens after this pandemic treaty gets signed, and where are we after that? Devil in the deep blue sea? You tell me. Where are we when, they stop trade because someone decides they're going to pull it up, or, not do this or not do that. What does that mean for the people of the country? And how does that mean that we bow down and subservient to an unelected government or an unelected bureaucratic makeup because they consider something that needs to be done and we need to do it? We are going into uncharted waters here, and it's dangerous. I'm telling you. Before you know it,
Okay.
it could be a total change around. We could be back in a situation where people are coming into this country all under the auspices or under the guise of keeping everybody safe and using public safety as a huge wedge to make sure that we're all safe. And what does that really mean? No government wants to talk about it.
Under control.
Yeah, full control of someone else that doesn't even. We've seen it with the National Cabinet. We didn't. The people in the government, myself included, didn't have a say about anything. We were absolutely circumvented and bypassed by a total abomination to the whole law and society of this country. And it happened there, and look what happened out of that.
Okay,
they talk about mental health, Bill. They talk about mental health. The mental health and anguish that stuff caused was like you have no idea. The destruction and the devastation to family units, to people, to old people not being able to go and see their families and friends, dying in homes and dying. Look, disgraceful, disgusting. It's a blight on our history. And then here we are again, going into another uncharted.
We haven't got the children through this system yet that are going to become adults who have got, have been caused problems as well. So we've still got years and years of problems to experience because of this one episode.
The reverberations will be profound. The situation as it is already in right now in the here and now is not good either. And there's no government that I'm seeing point to something that shows a way of being able to make it right, get a better future or anything else. All they're talking about is a load of wallop, and it's just like, come on, dig your head out of the sand for a minute and actually have a look at it and say, oh, well, let's try something totally different. Let's give these guys a go and let's step on the bandwagon that's going to be there for transparency, because that's all we want. Fair go. If you want a fair go, that's what I stand up for. And I know for a fact that I've been on the other side and I've seen both sides of it. And the decision making process it's not even in the minister's hands. Let's be honest. They don't even have a say. Somehow through bureaucracy, through the ether of the global governance, it's got more of a say than anyone else in this country ever has, and especially in the last 10 years anyway.
Okay, Steve, look, we've gone well over the hour. I'd like to thank you for coming on. If you just want to give one sort of final message to the people as they sort of think about going to the ballot box.
Look, I think, Clive's gone out of his way and spent a lot of money, not for himself, but for the people of Australia to have an opportunity to make change as far as governance as we know it in federal government, which, as we know, overrides both state and local government. I think there's an opportunity that you could grasp onto and you could actually have a say through, because the people of this whole organisation have got together because they're all just like us, mums and dads, fitters, tradesmen, bankers, insurance people, from all walks of life, mums and dads, people from the country, people from the city, that actually want to have a look of change right across the board, stop waste and make transparency a major factor in governance here in this country. Give them a go, because you've got absolutely nothing to lose, and I think we've lost enough already. It's time to start reeling it all back in, Bill.
Okay, Steve. Look, thanks very much. If you just stay there for a minute, I'll just introduce next week's guest and have a chat to you offline.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Bill.
If you enjoyed tonight's show, please like, share. No worries. If you like the show tonight, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook page, and also to subscribe to our YouTube channel. My guest next week will be Dr. Daniel Collins. He's the KAP candidate for Leichhardt, but he's a very interesting fellow in regards to his background and his position on utilising what we have in nature to actually have financial advantages. So it's not a matter of lock it up and leave it. It's a matter of utilise it and get some capital return on our land. So please join me next week when our guest is Dr. Daniel Collins. Thank you.